Hello viewers, welcome to The Profile. This is Arif Malik with Tony Buzan. Tony Buzan is Nobel Peace Prize nominee, author of 140 books translated in 41 languages worldwide. And he has a credit of unleashing the learning potential of an entire generation, which is believed to be approximately 1/7 of the humanity right now, all the world over, which is called the mind mapping. In Profile today, we have an extraordinary opportunity to discuss what Tony Buzan went through in the last 2 weeks when he stepped in Pakistan, not for the first time, but in Islamabad and Lahore for the very first time. Pakistan being one of the most, what Tony says, the most misunderstood countries in the world. So what he has been through. He has been speaking to the top chief executives in the corporate sector, meeting the best minds in academia, at the same time advising a few of the top politicians of the country. So we're going to have some slice of experience, this extraordinary experience from an extraordinary man. Tony.
Delighted to meet you yet again.
Oh yes, exactly. So welcome back to London from Pakistan.
It is nice for me to be back. It would be nice for me to come back to Pakistan, inshallah, soon.
Soon, yes. These are the plans. So you have an amazing story, and whenever you shared that in Pakistan, it enthralled the audience that time. Your first ever trip to Pakistan and the way you experienced Pakistan from the lens of don't enter that country advice.
Yes. I was informed, instructed, don't go to Pakistan. Pakistan is filled with terrorists. It's dirty, it's arid, it's uncultured, it's uneducated. You will probably get killed. So they said, don't go. I thought, how fascinating. I've traveled around the world. I've been to many places that I shouldn't go. And the places that I went to, like Ireland during the Troubles, Jamaica during Siaga Manley, in Soweto during the Apartheid, and many, many more, including Harlem in New York. I went there to those places and they were not what the media had told me they were. And so I thought, hold on a minute. In Pakistan, there are 180 million people and it's filled with terrorists.
Infested, yeah.
Yes. And so I thought, how odd, because every following morning with the dawn, there are 180 million people who wake up with the sun coming up. Now, had they all been terrorists, every individual, every terrorist would have been attacking every other terrorist, and there'd only be one Pakistani left that morning. But there were 180 million. And I thought something is seriously wrong in the media. So I went. And when I did arrive, my first evening in Karachi, I was told, make sure you go into a guarded hotel. So I did. And when I arrived, they said, you must stay in the hotel. Don't go out. You must have the best Pakistani food. I love Pakistan food. And I went into the restaurant, and it was a standard hotel restaurant. Air conditioning, cleaning, aromas. And so I said, I'm not going to eat here. I'm in Karachi. I want to eat Pakistan food in the city. So they said, no, you can't do that. I said, I'm going to do that anyway. So I got a car and I was driven into the center of Karachi. And they took me to a restaurant that I didn't know or even know of. And I arrived about 20 minutes later, and there was a kind of wonderful roundabout, and it was filled with Pakistan people. They were all families. So they were children skipping and dancing and laughing and playing and being naughty, as any good child should be. The people were happy, they were relaxed, they were talking with their friends. And I thought, really, is this dangerous place that I'm supposed never to go to? Yeah. So I walked out of the car and I just walked around, and I arrived at the barbecue at night, and I could smell the most magnificent aromas, the spices, the prawns, the lobsters, the steaks, the birds, the venison. I mean, you name the food, vegetables. It was wonderful. And I saw the barbecue, and I just wandered around with the people, and occasionally children would come up to me and think, who's this? And they would actually come up to me and kind of go,
that's for real.
Who is this thing? Because I was for some of those very young children, they'd never seen a white man like me. And so they were innocent and open and went straight up to me. Big, beautiful brown eyes, looking, wondering, who is this? And two of them actually grabbed me and took me to the place where I could go and eat. They actually guided me. And they weren't instructed to. It was just naturally childlike behavior. Everybody was happy. I didn't see one person, feeling aggressive. Most people's faces were calm or smiling or laughing, in love with each other, their children. And I thought, the media did not portray this country as this country is. It was not dangerous. And so I calculated the percentage of me getting killed, and it would be about the same as it is right where we are now.
So in the heart of London.
In the heart of London.
Yep.
It was just, and it was more peaceful. It was more peaceful, more happy. Just people and shaking hands and wanting to meet. So I went upstairs, right up to the top, and in the restaurant there was a lovely ceiling. The barbecues were wonderful, these giant trays of flaming coals, all beautifully organized into very hot and not so hot and cooling, artistic, scientific. And the smell, the aromas, while I was near them. And I ate the food, and children would occasionally come up and just look or touch or talk or point to good food. And I felt virtually in no time at all calm, happy, peaceful. And the food, divine. I ate for about 3.5 hours.
Wow.
Non-stop. It was so good. It was all fresh, it was organic. And I went back into the hotel and slept, kept my windows open because I could kind of feel the fragrance of the breezes, just wonderful. So I thought, well, tomorrow I'm going to be traveling, I'm going to lecture, and so I'll be on the streets. And the streets are dirty, dusty, unclean, the shops are messy, whatever shops, the people are uneducated, ignorant. So I came out of the hotel, and the first things I saw were the buses and the trucks and the lorries and the little buses. Every single one of them was like a traveling art gallery of genius.
Pakistani trucks.
Yes, every aspect of them. The front was like this giant front of a lorry or a truck, and it was festooned with beautiful original art and studs and stones and gems. And I thought, that's an uncreative culture? What?
That's what it looks like.
Yes. So I saw every single one of the little buses, and I checked, and every one of them was different, unique, and done by an untrained artist. Just a natural, like most children. Loved colors, loved observing, checking it, copying things, creating things. And I thought, this is very creative. And as I was watching, I was in a car and there were little motorcycles. And I thought, what? And everywhere it was like being in the middle of a bee's nest.
What?
And very, very quickly I observed that on every little tricycle, motorbike, there were at least 3 people on them. There was sometimes like a man, and almost buried in his gut area was a 3-month-old child, a baby.
Right on the side.
Yes, and standing, on the sideboards, 2 children holding on, looking, and behind the man there was another small child, and behind that child there was a mother holding those children, and they were going fast, and none of the children were frightened, none of them were, they were just, here we are. But I saw them zigzagging around, and within a minute I thought, they're going to get hit. They're going to hit each other.
So fuzzy, so
Yes.
fast.
Yeah, the angles, the speeds, the velocities, the masses, the volumes, they're going to get hit. And I thought that within a couple of minutes, in my car would get hit, or my car would hit somebody, because they were going and one couple of bikes were coming, and I calculated, and I got my degree in mathematics and geometry. I knew they were going to bang, and there would be an accident. But sure enough, they missed me and each other by a micrometer.
So,
And none of them hit anybody else, and there were hundreds of them. And I thought, oh my God, these uneducated people are phenomenal geometric mathematicians. They calculate post-Euclidean, post-Newtonian, post-Einsteinian, post-doctoral, doing these astonishing things, and nobody gets hit. So their brains knew how to calculate in a way that nobody ever could. It was impossible. And they just did it because it was to them natural.
yes, just a way of life, just another day.
Yes, that's what my brain can do. So I thought, this is a very different place from what I was told in the media. And as we were driving along, suddenly I saw stands. So it was like a market, an open market on the side of a main road. And that's supposed to be where the uneducated, the ignorant, the confused, the messy. And I looked at these stands, and every one was run by a different little stand owner.
Okay.
And I looked at these stands, and every stand was different from every other one. And on the stand, it was like Mondrian, beautiful rectangles of color. And every fruit was meticulously, pristinely organized, and then occasionally creatively arranged into little pictures or images. And every one linked in with a gamut of the colors. So all the peaches were there, and the side of them, the particularly peachy color, all displayed. So it was immaculate, and it was stand after stand, like 2 kilometers. And there were all these geniuses organizing things creatively, mathematically, geometrically. And I thought, when I go along some of the stands in every other country, they're dull, they're boring, they're just there to buy. But those stands didn't need any person to speak with a spoken language. The stands were proclaiming.
The visual pull is so great.
Yes, look at me, come and buy me, enjoy my colors, enjoy my shapes, enjoy my structures. And so I thought, this is a very creative country, a colorful country. And so then I began to calculate 180 million people. And as I was driving and occasionally watching the stands, suddenly up on my window would appear this beautiful face of a 7-year-old child who'd done acrobatics, who juggled, who'd blown fire, and who'd come to the window and kind of said, me. And the faces were open, innocent, very alert, very focused, very communicative. And many of them were obviously very healthy. Their skin was glowing. And I thought, hold on a minute, all this poverty-stricken stuff, many of them are having a better education than they did in many of the schools that I've seen kids sit in around the world, who are becoming rebellious, monochromatic, dull, bored, I don't like school. And they were all, the ones that I saw, alert, active, very intelligent, very communicative. And I didn't have any money with me. And one little girl came up to the window, kind of saying, and I said, I don't have. And she said, and then
All right.
kiss.
Wow.
With no money, right? She didn't just say, yeah, hell with you. Just, and I blew a kiss back to her. And as the car was starting to move away, she just looked and just said,
Wow.
total communication.
Reciprocatory, exactly. In the midst of all this chaos.
Yes, great social intelligence and very focused. And so I drove around and I was in Karachi. I went to some wonderful areas like the Museum of the History of Karachi.
And Karachi is the place which is like they're the founder of the nation. Muhammad Ali Jinnah.
Yes.
He was born, in fact, and his museum is also present. They're displaying his cars, his dresses,
Yes.
and probably also visited that one as well.
And I had heard, in the media, politicians are corrupt and they're not honest and not healthy and whatever. And I saw, the history of the real first political leader, lean, very fit, beautifully dressed, loved children, spoke poetically about what Pakistan is. Things like we as a nation have a wonderful opportunity. We, like many nations, have great difficulties. So we deal with them.
Yeah.
And we use our minds well. We use our intelligences well. We use our creativity. And when problems arise, we face them. And we deal with them. And that is hopeful. And as long as the nation aligns itself and agrees to create a more peaceful, cultured language and culture, it will be fine. Inshallah.
Exactly, yes.
And he was wonderful. And then I heard, I was asked, Tony Buzan, I know that you're a poet. Do you know about Iqbal?
Right, yes.
And I said, no, I do not know about Iqbal. Who's Iqbal? And I am then introduced to Iqbal.
The amazing
What
Iqbal.
a man. And throughout the world, nations are remembered by the poet. Like England, Shakespeare. Russia, Pushkin. Japan, Basho. The haikus. And in Pakistan, Iqbal. And I saw images and I heard about him writing about eagles and about the ocean and about the purpose of the mind, that we must learn how to write poetry, we must metaphorize. And I heard some of his poetry. Brilliant stuff. Now, why had I not been taught in my schooling about Iqbal?
Wow, that's a question.
It's a serious question. Why wasn't I taught about this man who I discovered this year, this month, in my life, when I should have been told about him 50 years ago, as a poet who I should read and study, and his philosophy extraordinary. So I then began to think about the future of Pakistan, because I began to see the country. It was not a dusty, desert, rocky, dirty, windy, messy place. There were beautiful valleys. There were wonderful plains and trees and avenues lined with trees. And I went to Lahore. Beautiful entrance. A bit like Singapore. And I thought, this is not the Pakistan I was told about. It's gorgeous. So rather than flying from Lahore to Islamabad, I was driven. I said, much better to drive. So I was driven 400 miles from Lahore to Islamabad. And here was this beautiful drive with wonderful rivers and wonderful green, beautiful green, deltas, wonderful flowers. And I thought again, hold on, this is a dirty Pakistan. It was beautifully organized. It was lush. And Islamabad, the same. So then I thought, all right, so let's look at the history of Pakistan. And Pakistan, considered to be a very poor, low-level nation. Singapore, 50 years ago, it was given to Lee Kuan Yew, and he arrived 50 years ago, and he and his mini government said, okay, let's take an audit in Singapore. And Singapore, not a big country, 37 kilometers, 17 kilometers, small, tiny, a dot. And so they took an audit. And what did they find? Gold, nothing. Oil, nothing. Forestry, nothing. Minerals, nothing. Nothing. And that's it. What are they going to do with it? He's the prime minister. And so he said, let's check what we have. The only thing we have is 200,000 human beings.
The only asset. What?
Not educated, just nothing. And he said, if that's the only resource, then we will invest in it. Education. In 47 years, they trained 200,000 people, and within 47 years, Singapore, #1 nation in maths, in English, in general education, GP, everything rising. And they said, wonderful, we're #1. Airline, Singapore Airlines, #1. However, although we're #1, we need to get better. The graduates can think, but they only think linearly. They only think rigidly. They need to be more creative. So what did Singapore do? They asked me to come and teach 5,000 teachers to help other teachers teach all the children in Singapore how to mind map, how to think, how to create, how to remember, how to use their memory, how to study how to read, not just read in the normal silly sense of the word, but read. And I discovered to my delight, Quran. It doesn't say, make sure you have a nice day, worship God, whatever. It says, read.
Wow, that's the first thing, yeah? The first letter.
And read means see, observe, study, analyze. So look at nature, look at the people, look at the environment. And they've trained themselves to do that. And sure enough, Singapore's still rising. So now let's think about Pakistan. Poor old Pakistan.
Yes, now we discovered the real of it.
So this is described as poor. Do they have oil?
Plenty.
Plenty. Do they have minerals and diamonds and
Loads
gold?
of them. Loads of them.
Loads and loads of jewels, gems. Do they have forestry? Gigantic. Do they have farming? Massive. Do they provide fruits and vegetables? Yes, they do.
Indeed.
Meat? Yes, they do. So they have phenomenal resort. And do they have big architectural treasures? National treasures?
Plenty of them. Historic.
Plenty of them. Museums, galleries, buildings that have been used historically, forts, beautiful buildings all over Pakistan. Mountains, Singapore none. Mountains in the north of Singapore. 37 of the highest 50 in the world. In Pakistan. So just that alone, incredibly wealthy. What about music? 5,000 years of mathematically brilliant, creative, original music. Singing, extraordinary. Dance, original. Poetry, obviously, Iqbal and many others. Clothes, design. The ladies in Pakistan have among the most beautiful clothes in the history of the human race.
Wow. Well, let's capture that again.
Yes. I mean, it's extraordinary. So that's what it has. And art, its art is, in most instances, especially the traditional, better than modern art. Because it's based on the genius, the genii. And then finally, how many people in Pakistan? 180 million. Pakistan has 180 million in comparison to 200,000 that started Singapore. So Pakistan is astonishingly wealthy. It has 180 million brains. And when they are trained exactly as Lee Kuan Yew did, imagine the future of Pakistan. It has everything. And all it needs to do is organize, to build up the education system, to slow down the linear note-taking where children say, it's monochromatic, it's monotonous, it's boring, and it is boring.
It is, yeah.
And the children are naturally creative. So in Pakistan, it doesn't take much effort now because the media can now contact 50 million children within a week. Within a week. And all the education that is needed is, here's about your brain. You got 1 million brain cells. Child, you're a genius. Do you daydream? Yes, you do. Is daydreaming good or bad? It's not bad. It's really good when you know how to use it, when you manage it. So you align all the energy of your intelligence. And when you mind map, the mind maps are the flowers of intelligence. So Pakistan is building forests and continents of flowers, just like Pakistan is, wherever you look, flowers, flowers, flowers. The mind map is a flower of intelligence. So the future of Pakistan is entirely in the minds of these 180 million people.
Indeed, and that's what we plan to unleash. On a side note, Tony was awarded his certificate of birth when he landed first time in Lahore. As there's a ritual, they say, if you haven't stepped inside Lahore, you are not born yet. So Tony got his certificate of birth in a formal ceremony in Lahore, in the great city. Now, when Tony talks about Pakistan as the next big thing, as a happening place, as a country which has got everything to become a superpower, which is blessed with all the resources, all the gifts, then we certainly, the whole world then is going to listen to it. And this particular message of hope and optimism, the challenges, we are familiar with the challenges, and we are braving with the challenges. But the best thing is that all these minds, when they're going to unleash their creative potential, whatever Tony Buzan taught to the world, mental literacy, thinking outside the box, creative thinking, are, in simple words, actually thinking at all. And this is something which is going to change the future of 180 million people, and not only those, but probably that particular region and the rest of the world. So this particular initiative of Tony Buzan's visit to Pakistan was organized by the World Congress of Overseas Pakistanis in collaboration with TVapex, the Brain Trust, Eventuality International, and Pakistan's host company, Possibilities International. This particular visit was one of the first of many to happen in the future, because we believe Tony Buzan's teaching in Pakistan are going to inspire the next generation of thinkers, the next generation of creative spirits who are going to, in fact, challenge the status quo and enrich the nation, then bring the glory what it deserves. So we'll have with us another guest who made this entire trip possible. But before that, we'd like to hear Tony's final words, because Tony will be visiting Pakistan again and again, and he's going to speak to the big policymakers, those who have great influence on academia, education, and on the destiny of the nation. He's going to advise many of them. He's going to speak to many of them. So, Tony, what's the big idea for the next year and the next project in Pakistan?
The big idea for the remainder of this year and the next year is to continue to develop all the incredible energy and the focus on education that it just arose while I was meeting institutions that I had no knowledge of at all. I mean, you can give the people
Certainly.
the University of Karachi,
Yes.
just
Long list.
rattle them off, because I spoke to many of these areas and these institutions, both in education, in business, in the military, in security, in the government. And I was amazed at the reactions to the information, to the possibilities, and the planning in their minds of what's going to happen in the future. You tell them what actually happened, because I was doing it.
So,
Arif had arranged it and met all of them and helped logisticize it, and it was magnificently done. But I didn't see it. I didn't see it because nobody, I was not seeing my face.
so busy doing it.
I didn't see what I was doing. I was just doing it. So Arif can give a summary of what happened.
Oh, I would love to. In fact, this particular visit brought us face to face and several people for the first time, with the policy-making institutions, with the academic institutions, with the corporate sector in Pakistan. One particular seminar in Lahore that was focused on creative leadership. It pulled approximately 400 key leaders, chief executives of national and multinational companies in Pakistan, and they learned from the man himself how to think creatively, how to lead creatively, and how to use mind map to unleash their creative potential. Not only this, in universities in Karachi, then in Lahore, and then the National Defense University in Islamabad, that in fact provided an opportunity to some of the key leaders in their respective disciplines to learn from Tony Buzan how to lead effectively while making the most of their gifts and at the same time conquering limitations. And their hunger is growing. There's massive interest, and we believe sooner and later, like this year and the next year, when we reach out to the remaining hundreds of millions of people, hungry minds who endeavor to make the best out of their lives, that's when we're going to see the true change.
How are the audiences responding?
The audience, in fact, they were thrilled with one particular aspect, that they were able to suddenly see more and in fact explore more and see more colors, see more opportunities, see more in what they have. Particularly the very idea of putting your mind to work and in fact thinking out of the box and using the creative side of it, that in fact unleashed a wave of thinking, and a fresh one. So they were totally ecstatic about the new vista. In fact,
Did they respond in the normal way?
For many reasons, they didn't, because they were looking at things from an extraordinary way now, and the normal was no more the choice.
So how were they different?
They were different, I would say, the way I read it. They were different because they were looking at things more creatively now.
I was told by them afterwards and by other people who observed them that for the first time in their life in audiences they had not smiled at all. They'd sat very seriously to behave properly in school and not to joke and not to giggle, not to smile, not to laugh. I saw some of the most witty, laughing, ta-da-da individuals who meant that they had been concentrating really well, and they saw the humor and the fun and the enjoyment in learning, which immediately doubles the power of the brain to learn. So I found them as individuals, not systematically, individually. They were humorous, witty, focused absolutely, and enjoyed it all. And also Arif himself came here in London some few months ago and said, "Professor Buzan, would you be so kind as to come to Pakistan?" And I said, "Why?" And he gave me multiple brilliant reasons. And I said yes. And there's a lovely short story in his life about why he had decided at a particular time to do X, Y, Z, and he worked on it, and he did.
Right. Now this is what that relates to the life journey, and this is what we shared with the profile viewers earlier as well. So what Tony is pointing out that relates to, in fact, finding your real voice and making the most of it, and that is summed up in the book, I Am Possible for the Same Reason. So you'll be watching some 5 minutes of description that particularly narrates the story, and we'll get back to you.
So why did I go to Pakistan? Why did you invite me?
Well, for us at the World Congress of Overseas Pakistanis, in fact, we were looking at all the bad press and all the bad media. One of the biggest questions was the Pakistan, what we feel, what we experience, which is full of colors, full of laughter, of music, full of life, the rest of the world wouldn't be seeing that much, because whatever the images they are being fed, those are bleak, black, and colorless. So when we are looking at a few of the most effective people around us, those people who are working for humanity, making a big difference, inspiring hundreds of millions of lives. So that's how we got in touch with Tony Buzan in first place. And as I'm myself a student approximately 17 years back, so his teachings deeply impacted my life.
What year?
Particularly on mind map, and that in fact made me think in first place. And that was the time when me myself along with a friend, somehow we had a wild dream of inviting Tony Buzan to Pakistan and inspiring those hundreds of millions of lives. And that became the starting point, and that was 1998. And somehow we were able to live this in 2015.
1998. One individual had a dream, and it simply was, I've become aware of mind maps, I'm using mind maps, this individual said, and he then said, 1998, I will get to him as soon as possible in the best time. And so this year, 2015, he came with his companion, Caesar.
Yes, exactly. We call him Caesar Abbas of Possibilities. So who made this whole thing happen. They're a great team.
And they devoted chunks of their life to make sure it happened. And all those cities that you saw or heard about, Karachi, Lahore, Islamabad, you heard about the institutions. All of those were arranged and organized primarily by Arif and his team. So for you, have a good daydream and make it come true.
Dream is definitely worthwhile. If you could follow it, then it, in fact, never gives up on you. So that's what the message of the profile is today. While we are going to introduce you to one of the main person who made this event and this whole trip possible, we'll be inviting and having a brief chat with Syed Kamar Raza, the co-chairman of World Congress of Overseas Pakistanis. Thank you. We have with us Syed Kamar Raza, who is co-chairman and founder of World Congress of Overseas Pakistanis. This initiative has been arranged by World Congress of Overseas Pakistanis, and Syed Kamar Raza has been a great support in making this trip possible. So, Mr. Raza, what do you think this whole initiative, particularly a person like Tony Buzan, went to Pakistan, spent approximately 2 weeks, had an amazing experience, and now talking about it with the press, the media, everyone around him. So what inspired you to think of this particular initiative of bringing a person like Tony Buzan to Pakistan, and what are your future plans in regards to that?
Thank you very much, Dr. Saab, for giving me time. In fact, it's a great honor to having Tony Buzan in Pakistan, and in fact we want to take different great names and brains to Pakistan. They can see themselves what Pakistan is and what rumors about Pakistan surrounding at the moment. So once they have first-hand knowledge of Pakistan, so I think they will explain better to the world, because they have millions and millions of followers. So I think message will go across.
Excellent. So we believe there will be more people going to Pakistan, those experts from science, technology, media, and other industries, so the big names.
And yeah, all over the walk of life. That's what our plan is, to be honest. And you can see after visiting Pakistan what Tony Buzan comments. He is more safer in Islamabad than London.
Yeah, I think it's a big comment. I think it's only through the personal interaction that you can actually delay the reality and actually say that. So I believe World Congress of Overseas Pakistanis would continue this amazing work, and
Definitely.
there'll be more people and more positive news emerging from that particular angle.
Definitely, that's what our plan is, and that's what we want to show, what Pakistan actually it is, and how good the Pakistan is. If you look at Pakistan, we have 4 seasons, we have all kind of delicious food, lovely people, and lovely surroundings, you know.
And it's just the first big step, and hopefully more big news coming up. So thank you very much. Stay tuned. Thank you very much.